Time management on its own is useless for neurodivergent people. Often I can condense 1 month's worth of work into a couple of days, or depending on where I am on my pendulum swing, it might take me 3 hours to do a 5-minute task. So time is not always the most effective lever to pull when thinking about productivity or discipline. Hi, I'm Athena. I talk about metacognition through the lens of creativity, discipline, and spirituality. Today I'm really excited to talk about energy management. Plenty of people are talking about, but today it's my turn. It's my time to put my seasoning on it, so here we go. Also, I would add to energy management another subsection, which is energy orientation. So really we're gonna be focusing mostly on orientation, but I know the concept of energy management is more familiar, and so that's the language that I'm going to be using. I've stated this before, but discipline without an anchor is useless, because if you don't know what you are anchoring around, then you are just doing a whole lot of motion, a whole lot of work, but not necessarily getting closer to whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. One of the first things to put in place, in my opinion, when you're thinking about discipline and productivity is to understand, how is your energy oriented? What do you want the priority or the goal to be? And I don't mean the goal as in the task or the larger project that you're trying to achieve. I mean, is the priority for how you are moving? And that is going to shape your metrics of success. Let me give an example. Points of orientation could be how much you're getting done, so the volume of tasks. It could be how you feel while you're getting it done. It could be how quickly you do the things or how slowly. It can be how much effort you're putting in. Another example of a point of orientation or a priority within your discipline could be how valuable the task is to you. I know that was a lot of things very quickly, but if you take, for example, the difference between if you're prioritizing getting as many tasks done as possible versus how you feel while working, those are going to have different metrics of success, because success on the number of tasks that you create is literally about how much can you get done, whereas success in the version where you're prioritizing how you feel while you're working, success is going to be whatever emotion you are prioritizing or whatever feelings you want to experience while going through the work. And so it's really important for you to define your own anchor. What is the thing that you are wanting to prioritize in the process of doing your work? That is the beginning, I would say, of energy orientation or of energy management. As I said in the intro, time is not a very useful lever for me to pull most of the time, because what really matters is whether or not I can coax myself into doing the work that needs to be done. Because once I am able to get myself into work mode, then again, like, time collapses or expands depending on where I am in my various neurodivergent cycles. Thus, the more important lever that I personally need to pull is more towards emotional. So for me, I do tend to prioritize setting, like, atmosphere of work, because the atmosphere informs how I feel, which informs how into the flow I can get. And of course, as I will say many, many times over many, many videos, this is such an individual game that what I'm sharing is just meant to be an example for you, not necessarily meant to be the answer. It's one answer among many. What I really like about energy management versus time management is that truly 30 minutes, if I'm in a bad mood, is going to produce different outcomes than 30 minutes if I'm in a good mood or even neutral. And I think that this is something that I really crystallized for me during the lockdown period of the pandemic, because during that quarantine period, I had all the time in the world. There were some days where all I could manage to do was get out of bed to tend to my bodily functions like eating. And then I would get back in bed and just be there tweaking, essentially. But also during the pandemic was when I was able to create and publish my podcast, What Happens in Between. And I was able to put out an episode every single week for a whole year, which was incredibly labor intensive. But that was often not necessarily something that I tied to time. It was so much more like, oh, today I have the energy, so now I can book 3 different people, or I can have this many interviews in one day. The quarantine period really helped me to understand my relationship to time as it relates to work, because truly they are completely uncorrelated with each other. Not completely, I guess, but they're really not tethered to each other in a way that is proportional or easily measured. What is actually driving how I move is the energy that is occupying the space that I'm trying to work in. And I would personally argue that having time as your primary anchor for discipline is difficult. One, because it is like an external factor. So it is already removing a little bit of autonomy from your process, because time is like a large, vast being outside of yourself. Obviously, it interacts with us, and there are things within our body that are tied to time. But for the most part, at least in the Western sense of things, like the way that we interact with time is very external and often lacking agency. So using time as an anchor is putting yourself already in a space of not having as much agency as you could as it relates to you achieving the things you want to achieve. That was a longer sentence than I wanted it to be, but sometimes it'd be like that. Another reason why I value energy management or energy orientation as the anchor for my relationship to discipline is because you get to negotiate with energy. You can negotiate with energy. You can kind of negotiate with time, but I feel like you have to be like really up on your spiritual game to be negotiating with time. It's a lot easier to negotiate or to curate energy as opposed to time. So what can it look like to negotiate with energy? So I brought this up before, but atmosphere. It's actually very easy to train yourself with cues for the energetic space that you'd like to enter. So a really easy example that you might already be doing is the use of music. People who play lo-fi when they're about to study, people even do this at the gym, or it could be for studying or for work. The use of music, or even just putting in headphones with the intention of working, you are now training yourself. You're giving yourself an almost Pavlovian experience of, oh, when headphones go in or when this type of music is playing, I'm now in this energetic space. That is negotiating with energy, quite literally. You can also do this with any sense, like sensory experience. I like to light incense when I'm about to go into a very specific style of writing. And so I create a container for myself, an energetic container where for as long as the incense stick is burning, I am tapped into this particular energetic field that I like to use for a particular style of writing. Even the difference between having an open and a closed door can be a subtle way that you express to yourself what kind of energetic space you want to be in. And another factor of energy negotiation is really, it's about building trust with yourself. Yes, there is the negotiation of like, how are you going to coax yourself into getting to the work that you want to get to? But there's also the other part of it of recognizing when you are or are not available for something. Sometimes you can set the atmosphere and still be in a space internally that is just not allowing you to do the thing. My question to you is, can you trust that at some point you will be in the mood to do the thing? I know for some people that feels really scary, but I have personally watched myself go through like cycles and cycles of everything. And what I understand is that energy and emotions and how I'm feeling is temporary. It's all temporary. And I'm going to move through the entire like emotional wheel at some point over the next couple of months. What has been the most helpful for me as I think about energy management is also understanding that because it's a cyclical thing, because it is a fleeting experience, I also can trust that at some point I'm going to, come back around, and if I might be in a bed rot mood for the next 2 weeks, I know that I'm going to come out of it at some point and be like, whoa, I am, dare I say, completely available to get on my Zoom at 10. Okay, to recap, you get to choose what your priority is in your relationship to discipline or your relationship to productivity. Secondly, energy management for some people is a more useful lever than time management because you can negotiate with energy. You have more or less complete agency over the energy that you're bringing to a task or to a project, which means that you can practice more autonomy with energy management than you can with time management. And the last point that I want to recap here is that energy negotiation is a trust building exercise. So as you are navigating your own cycles and the particular cadence that you have with yourself, with your relationship to discipline, it's really up to you to decide in each and every moment to trust that if you don't have the energy right now, the energy is coming, right? It's a cyclical process. You're a cyclical being. And so you don't always have to force yourself to do something. It's okay to trust that it's coming. The time is coming. The energy space is coming. Awesome. Thanks for watching. Last week, I talked about that funny little cosmic joke that happens whenever you decide to commit yourself to something you truly want. If you've ever noticed that you experience more distractions or temptations whenever you decide to change your life, you can watch this video to learn the pseudo psychology behind that and some ways to deal with it. Thank you once again for watching. I'll see you in the next one.